All right, welcome. My name is Michael Brabant from integralawakening.com, and this is a free interactive video webinar that I'm calling Redefining Love, a direct path towards unconditional connection. So we're going to be diving in together, and there'll be a presentation on a certain video presentation that illustrates some more of the points that I'll be making. We'll do some meditation together, do some exercises with you to be able to take some of the stuff that you're learning about today and enact it in your life. So before we start going into any content, let's just drop into ourselves. So find a comfortable seated position and begin to just feel your feet on the floor. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable, and allow your breath to come up from the ground through your feet and exhale down through your body back into the ground. Just doing this for a couple of breaths, really relaxing into yourself, letting everything that's coming up in your awareness, your thoughts, your emotions, life circumstances, just allow them all to be present and focus only specifically on the breath from the ground up into your body and exhale down out your feet. And then I'd invite you to call forward your life in your mind's eye, in your awareness. And just begin to notice what's really clicked in, what's really aligned and flowing smoothly. And just notice those areas of flow and congruence. And then begin to notice what aspects of your life are sticky, that don't feel aligned, where you feel like there's blocks, or where you feel like it's just a facet of your life that you'd rather ignore because it's not aligned, it doesn't flow, it's just much easier to put to the side. And begin to notice what those two different components, those two different ways that you've oriented towards different areas of your life. Just notice the difference of what that feels like. What that feels like in your body. Discrepancy. And then feeling your feet once again. And then just letting your forehead relax. Letting your brain relax in its skull. And then open your eyes. So the main title of this webinar is Redefining Love. And it's one of my favorite topics, but also one that's hard to do a webinar on because it's so rich and it's so multifaceted, this topic, and there's so many perspectives to take. So I would just encourage you, in alignment with the forehead being smooth and the brain relaxing, to just receive this information like a wave, letting it just come into your being and move through, and whatever sticks is trustable to be of service to you. So if you've been in the world with any sort of visibility of the news or even on Facebook, the world is changing drastically, and structures of government and structures of economy are beginning to be seen as not so true any longer and are requiring updates. And some of the harshest ways in which those updates take place is through the destruction of current structures, like government being overthrown or the economy crashing, these sorts of things. But the same sort of emergence is happening in our own lives. So on the individual level, you may be noticing that certain things in your life that you've done for a long period of time are no longer giving you the same results and are requiring of you certain updates. And Redefining Love, as the title of this webinar, is really, where are you not aligned in your life, and what part of your life is in need of updates? And you can think of it kind of like software updates on your computer. So when it's time to update your operating system or a certain software, you'll get a little notice that says, would you like to update? And there's two options oftentimes. It's yes, or download, or whatever it is, and then not now. And part of what happens in our life is we're busy, we have a lot of complexity to deal with, and there's a lot going on, so we just click the not now button, and then it comes up again the next day, and it's not now, not now, not now. And if we fail to update the things in our life that are in need of updating and keep putting it off, life begins to tap on our shoulder and say, hey, you need to look at this. And if we keep saying not now, not now, not now, that tap turns into a knock. And that knock brings with it symptoms of pain in the body, or difficulty in relationships, or not having enough money. All these different things act as symptoms. And then that knock, if not addressed, if not listened to, turns into a pound. And we keep, as the pounding happens, the circumstances, the reminders, they get more dire, they get more intense. And this could take the form of being diagnosed with a certain illness, or having your partner break up with you because you haven't listened to their needs and had that harder conversation that has been needing to be had for a long time. Or maybe you get fired from your job, or maybe you're just fall into a deep depression because you don't feel fulfilled by anything that you're doing in your life. And so to avoid these poundings on the doors, we need to attune to the taps, the subtle updates that life is asking us to engage with. And in order to live life unconditionally, having unconditional love for others and yourself, to be really deeply aligned with your soul's gifts and offer that into the world, it requires an attunement to these deeper and more subtle reminders and lessons and teachings that life is offering us in every moment. And for you to even be interested in something like this, to desire an unconditional connection with another person, or an unconditional connection with yourself, this is a pretty radical statement. So if you have a desire to live deeply in congruence with your soul, or to be an expression of love, this prayer that you put out into the world is a very, very powerful one. And whether you do have that prayer, whether you don't, but are interested, it requires a sifting through all the things in your life that are incongruent, that don't work, that aren't aligned, and that can be a challenging process. But it's having awareness of these things that don't work that really enable a more fluid transition into a life that's more aligned, that has more fulfillment. And we'll be talking about this more, and I'll be giving examples of how to do that. So it's important to recognize that the outside of our life reflects the inside of our life. So if there's part of us that isn't attuned to emotionally, or there's unmetabolized energy or emotion in our being, that has correlations with the external world. So usually if you aren't in loving relationship with yourself and accept who you are and are very judgmental, that often shows up in the way that you're judgmental to other people and reflects itself in your relationships where there isn't oftentimes deep intimacy and connection, or maybe you haven't been able to find a partner that really is true for you, that really lights you up and supports and loves you in the way that you most need. So if we're able to recognize that the inside and the outside are deeply interwoven, then we can become more responsible about what we need to change and shift in our inside to begin to make those shifts outside. And vice versa, if we just focus on things on the outside that need to change, there also needs to be internal shifts that enable those things to happen and be sustainable. And a lot of times we numb ourselves to the truth of what's not working. Or we think that taking a plunge into the unknown or into things that are scary territory is going to be so painful. We're so scared of that, of dipping our toe in that intensity, that it keeps us from experiencing what's underneath that layer. Because, for instance, we could think that facing a certain emotion in our life or speaking a truth in a relationship could seem so daunting, so intense. And if it were a body of water, it's almost like, a toxic, it looks like toxic water or molten lava. You don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's so intense. But that molten lava or that toxic layer in this body of water, as an example, is usually only a couple inches thick. And we dip our toe into it and it's too hot or it's too intense. But then if we bring ourselves to rest in it, we begin to see that what's beneath that top layer of intensity is so much energy, so much freedom that's waiting to come forward and be utilized in our life through living what's most true to us and connecting with the people that we love. And it's important that we even investigate that top layer of fear and resistance that we have and not take it so seriously, so we can begin to see that it's not so daunting and we actually have the capacity to engage the things that are most scary. So another example of this, another metaphor, is if you're in a dark room and in the corner of the room you see what looks like a snake that's coiled up. And you stay away from it because you don't want to be messing with a snake. You don't know if it's poisonous or it's going to bite you. But if you actually stay long enough, it's almost like in this dark room, you're able to flip the switch of the light on for a second. And you see that switch and you look in the corner, and what was a snake is actually a coiled up rope. And even though the light is off, and it may still look like a snake, you know that you've seen that it's a rope. And so what was big and bad and scary is now safe and no big deal. But it requires you having the courage to look. And if you don't look, you're always going to be scared of things that maybe aren't worth being scared of. And a wise teacher of mine once said that when, and this has been quoted in many different ways, but when the pain of not being aligned with what's most true for you is greater than the pain of dealing with your current reality, then you'll make a shift. I think the quote was, when the pain of staying closed as a bud is greater than the pain of opening, we open. And there's a way to expedite this process in a really gentle way, and that's through awareness. So you can't unsee, you can't become unaware of things that you've been aware of. And part of what this webinar is offering is awareness in things that can help you get beyond those buffer zone layers of fear and resistance to begin to go deeper into your fears and resistances and see that you have the capacity to move through them and to attain the life that you most deeply desire that may or may not include unconditional connection with yourself or others. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to take you through a little presentation that's going to illustrate some different ways in which we can orient towards our life. So let me switch it here. Thank you for your patience. All right. So here we are on this path. The title being, Are You Walking on the Path That Leads Towards Your Deepest Goals? And this could be translated as, Are you walking on the path that leads to your deepest truth, to fulfillment, to joy? So I'm going to use this metaphor of a bus. So if there's all these different kinds of buses that we live our life as a metaphor for, there's all these different kinds of buses that we live our life on. So sometimes we live on the bus of relationship, where relationship is our fullest focus, is our main priority. And so everything in our life is based on being in relationship, about finding the one, or hoping that the one we're with is the one, and ignoring the things that don't feel aligned. So when you're walking through your life and relationship is your main focus, then you're really focusing on feeling connected to somebody, feeling comforted by them, feeling supported by them, and it's really about security. So things like, you're going to be with me forever, no matter what. And marriage can be a really beautiful thing, and sometimes it's an excuse to let yourself go and not see your life and your partner freshly, or yourself freshly, because there's this commitment that is forever, and so you're safe. You don't need to look anymore. You found it. You don't need to update yourself. So while this is beautiful, many things are left out. So if your focus and intention is all about connection and security and comfort, if something doesn't feel right in your relationship, it's going to be hard for you to challenge when it's appropriate. Challenge beliefs, challenge actions, challenge the way things are. And when it's all about comfort, we don't get to really burn in those unmet needs that we have that are really important actually for us to heal on our own, or through at least our own understanding, and instead put it on the other person and make them responsible for our happiness, which doesn't always lead to such great things. And I also wrote here boundaries, when whatever it is that needed by one person is not in both parties' highest good. And so this is kind of the example of when you want somebody to do something for you or with you, or you want them to go to an event with you, or watch a movie with you, or whatever it is, and the person really doesn't want to. But since comfort and security is more important than what's most true, they succumb to that desire of you, or you succumb to the desire of them, and do something that's against what feels right to you, and then resentment builds up, and all these things begin to happen that aren't so good, that happen under the surface. So what this leads to, as these things are left out, are a growing number of pink elephants, more and more things that can't be talked about, that take up energetic space between you, that limit the depth of your connection. And so this could also lead to just resentment of the partner that you're with, or cheating on your partner, or having your partner cheat on you, and just generally a lack of passion and satisfaction in your life. So this is all based on the fact that relationship and maintaining connection in relationship is the driving force of your life. So not everybody is like this, not everybody has this, but some people do. But some people are focused deeply on their career. So the focus of their life is a career. So their bus that they're driving on in reality is all about success, making money, and respect, the reputation they carry, and also, as you may notice, like relationships, also about security. And because it's only about security, only logical, linear, rational decisions are made. So this is not the place where people take risks or do anything to jeopardize their comfortable life. But what this leaves out, as you'll find, is if your career is all about success and reputation, sometimes it's great that you can, sometimes in rare cases you can have all those things and be deeply aligned with your true purpose, but often not. And you see this all the time with people who live and work in corporate setting and get to a place where they contract an illness, or their back goes out, or they wake up one morning and like, what am I actually doing with my life? And so those wake-up calls are kind of like big knocks on the door that probably started with softer whispers that life was offering. But because they're so blinded by their desire to have their career, they can't listen to their heart. And they don't take risks based on both rational thinking and intuition and what's really deeply calling them forward in their life. And that can be an issue because if you really feel what your deepest longing is, and your life doesn't match that, that requires you to look at something that's difficult to look at oftentimes. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Oh, so this can lead to burnout, apathy, just going through the motions and not feeling and actually needing to compartmentalize yourself. I'm calling that robot mode. And again, resentment. Resentment to your work, resentment to yourself, resentment to your family, and just a spreading of suffering in a way that doesn't really serve anybody. So some people, and this is also very pertinent for people who are on the spiritual path. Some people focus their whole life on healing. How do I heal this psychological wound or this physical problem? And in a spiritual sense, it's about alleviating suffering. So somebody who's on a spiritual path may be saying to themselves that I want to awaken. I want to live to my fullest potential. I want to express my gifts into the world. But in actuality, it's really focused on alleviating their own personal suffering because it hurts too bad. And while this is important to alleviate suffering so that we can be more available, if it's the focus of our entire life, it's never going to lead to true fulfillment. And again, you may notice a theme here with focusing only on relationship or only on career or only on healing. It's about comfort. It's about ease. It's about fixing what's not working. And it's not looking at the deeper meaning of what this illness or what this discomfort is here to teach you. It's all about getting out of that intensity. And what this leaves out is asking the questions, what is the feedback of your body or your psyche trying to tell you about what's not working in your life? And what do you need to take responsibility for? What emotions do you need to feel and face? What circumstances in your life do you really need to restructure and evolve? And oftentimes the body is the last place that these things enter into or manifest. And there's many reasons why illness occurs, and everybody has their own paradigm and worldview on this. But for the purposes of this webinar, it's imbalance in your physical body is offering you information about what's not flowing in other areas of your life, emotionally or in your external world. And what's also left out here is that healing is a river that ebbs and flows. And what I mean by that is healing and health isn't a stable thing. It continues to move as we continue to move. And an example of this is, for instance, there are ways in which people who have slipped discs or herniated discs only get flare-ups in their being when they're under a lot of stress. And herniated discs, from a structural standpoint, don't necessarily lead towards pain. And there's been lots of studies where people have had these structural anomalies without pain, yet that structural anomaly predisposes them to having physical flare-ups when they're under stress. And this one teacher said, We never have front problems, we only have back problems. Because as a metaphor of pushing things away that we don't want to see, we put them into our back, as one example. And of course there's many recent injuries and whatnot that can lead to this. But it's important to recognize that when we experience pain in our body, if we just first focus on getting rid of it, we lose the information that it's here for. And there's lots of opportunities in our society to not feel the pain and not go into what's most alive or what that pain is trying to tell us. And so it takes a deeper reorientation to your life, because society and most things around us don't support us in that deeper inquiry. So what this can lead to, if your focus is just on healing, is a deep selfishness, because you're just really prioritizing your own well-being. And while this is important and in many cases very necessary in being able to be of service to the world, you need to focus on your own well-being, of course. But if your entire existence is about healing, you're not going to be able to take into account other people's needs and what's of the highest good for everybody involved, not just yourself. This can lead to, hoarding resources, or, in the spiritual world, it's, running to the front of the room and asking all the questions of the teacher because I need a fix, I can't deal with this suffering, you got to help me. And it can also lead to stagnation. These are opportunities and things when the medical community is like, throws their hands up and it's, I don't have anything to do. It doesn't make sense physically why you're still having this problem. And this happens all the time. And this is oftentimes when people recognize that Western medicine is not the totality of what healing is about, and they go to alternative treatments, because so much of Western medicine is externally focused on symptoms and treating the body as a machine and giving it new input so that it creates new output, or medication that numbs pain so you don't have to feel it. But the deeper underlying cause isn't there. So if we only focus on healing and not see that deeper context in which the pain and imbalance arises, then sometimes we get to a plateau that we can't bust through. And again, just like the resentment that builds if relationship is your main focus in life, or career is your most important focus, can lead to spreading suffering, because you're in a crappy mood all the time because you're just focusing on healing and everything sucks because you're not healed. And you can see this with people who are always complaining about their pain, or there's always something wrong with them. They're not taking responsibility for what's happening, and because it's in the body and we live in this society that says, well, it's okay that these things can be, you can take medications, you can have all sorts of ways to dress your wounds to make them more comfortable, but it doesn't address the deeper issue. So that suffering is then spread to other people because you're actually not getting to the root cause. So now I want to talk about living your life through the bus of awakening. And awakening can mean many things to different people. But in the way that I'm describing it here, it's about taking 100% responsibility for your response to every moment, to all the emotions that you feel, being 100% honest with yourself and others, with those, that still small voice that says, hey, this isn't working, or this isn't true, or you need to get out of here, you need to shift jobs, this partner isn't right for you. It's not about putting any one facet of life as the priority. It's about staying as awake and conscious as possible so that you can be agile and navigate through the world in a way that is really honoring what your deeper intuition is telling you. And instead of blaming anything, anyone, any circumstance for your pain or what's not working for you, every moment is seen as a teaching. Instead of resisting anything, it's more of, why is this here? What is this here to tell me? And this is a radical orientation or reorientation for most of us to life. Because we have certain boxes that we put things in. It's like, oh, I have digestive issues, so then it's the food's fault, or it's the way that it was prepared, or whatever the excuse may be. But It's actually you needing to be responsible for what is true for your body's needs. And if you use, for instance, comfort foods that your body doesn't digest as a way to cover up emotion, then it's going to be harder for you to take responsibility that the way that you're eating is affecting your digestion. Because then you would also have to take responsibility for the emotions that are underlying the food that you eat to cover it up. And so it's very essential to, in this orientation towards life, not take your belief system seriously and begin to look freshly at every single moment and recognize that there are no cop-outs. Ultimately, complaining doesn't lead to long-term change, and it's actually you that have responsibility to change your life, and at the same vein have the power to change your life. So when we look at what's left out, nothing's left out, because you're totally committed to being present in every moment and responsive to what that is, even if that means you updating your belief systems or taking responsibility for actions that hurt other people or inactions that didn't lead to success that you're complaining you don't have. So if we take awakening as our priority, I have this picture here. It may look kind of religiously oriented, but it was my example of a soul or a higher self or a deeper self. So this woman meditating here and the figure in the sky are connected. The figure in the sky is seen as her deepest self, her fullest expression. So an awakening is the view that you see reality through, the lens. Then you become deeper and deeper congruent with your soul, and you listen closer and closer to your heart's knowing. And how this shows up in these previous domains is that you speak your truth in relationships. You don't swallow what feels most true to you to appease your partner, or to avoid an argument, or to avoid a tough conversation that requires you to pay attention to things that you haven't paid attention to. It also leads to asking tough questions for yourself, of yourself. What are the things that you need to change? What are the practices you need to stop doing? What are the foods you need to stop eating? What are the conversations you need to stop having? What are the new actions you need to take? And it helps you over time to slowly, and sometimes not so slow, depending on how big of a risk you take, to align all aspects of your life with your soul. And so if we think of relationship and career and your well-being as streams, awakening is the ocean. And if you're not on a spiritual path and you're not on a path of conscious awareness, then you may be stuck in one of those areas of your life, focusing on relationship just for the sake of relationship, for security, all the other things that I mentioned before. And when we start on a spiritual path of self-knowledge and understanding, then we begin to see that life has its place, and spirituality is just another stream. So we go to work and we do our work thing, and we're in relationships and we do our relationship thing, and we have our spiritual practice, and sometimes it's quiet. We don't tell everybody, we don't act the way we most deeply want to act, and it's itself a separate river. But the problem with that is that the insights that we gain through our spiritual practice and our inquiry get compartmentalized away from the other areas of our life. And it builds up a certain pressure, a pressure that keeps us from finding flow and fluidity in these other areas. And we come up against these barriers in our life that don't work. Life just stops working as well. And we need to update our structure. But if we're not bringing wakefulness and honesty to these other areas of our life, and spirituality is just something we do on the weekends, then it keeps us from having our resources at our disposal to make the necessary changes that we need to make, to live in deep integrity with our soul, with what's most true. And it requires us to continually expand our comfort zone. And instead of shying away from things that make us uncomfortable, if we recognize that discomfort with anything, with speaking in front of groups or speaking your truth to your partner or whatever it is that causes discomfort, that discomfort is actually a sign that you're leaning in an expansive direction, that your current understanding doesn't allow you to see this uncomfortable thing as part of who you've been, and so you get scared. And going back to what we talked about in the beginning about this, if our things that make us uncomfortable are like a body of water that is full of hot lava, we think that it's hot lava all the way down at the bottom, but really that hot lava stops a couple inches from the surface. But we need to jump in, so to speak, and feel those feelings or do those things that are uncomfortable to expand our comfort zone, to be able to see that we can do more than what we thought. And when we expand our comfort zone, we begin to lean into new, more expansive aspects of our existence, and we raise the bar about what's possible. And this path of wakefulness and honesty and responsibility is the only path towards full fulfillment. Because if there's things that are incongruent in our life, we may be happy. But if there's things that are incongruent to our life, we're kidding ourselves about our happiness. We have a lower bar than what was possible. And sometimes we can't even feel. We're so numb, we can't even feel what's not true and what's not aligned. And by beginning to engage more and more in this way with these sorts of practices or this sort of orientation towards life, you begin to feel, you begin to descend into what's always been there, but you've been blind to for whatever reason. And there's no problem with how you lived your life. I want to make that clear. It's okay however you've been. It's okay however you are. You hold the throttle in your hand. You have the capacity to move forward in your life or not. But when you begin to see that you need to move forward in your life and you're not, that's when the friction starts happening. And that friction begins to create heat. And we can put our head in the sand and not face the things we need to face. Or we can relax into the burning. And we can love ourselves by allowing ourselves to feel what it wants to feel, because our body, mind, heart is unwinding, is expanding towards greater levels of complexity and love and truth. Whether we're on a path where awakening is our priority or not. And it's when we resist that unfolding that we experience suffering. And so we actually don't need to put rocket boosters on. It's enough to be honest with everything. It's enough to be willing to listen to what's misaligned and begin to shift it, because there's so much evolutionary thrust behind every one of us that we don't need to reach for more. We need to relax the ways in which we hold on to less, and our life can begin to unfold more naturally. So then, therefore, I ask the question again, are you walking on the path that leads towards your deepest goals? Are you focused on security of finding the one, focusing your whole life on relationships, or finding the perfect job, or healing your body-mind? Or are you unconditionally and agendalessly showing up to whatever happens in your life and being both honest with yourself completely and others and willing to act upon what you see in that honesty? And that question really aligns with yourself. And it's after you experience this awareness, then that burning, that developmental friction becomes stronger, and it becomes harder to put your head in the sand. And at this point, it's really important to find communities and resources and support like this webinar to begin to help validate and mirror that longing in you, that desire for more, that desire for truth. Because as we mentioned earlier, life and society at large wants to keep us quiet, wants to keep us at bay, is scared of our fierce love to question, to live from our depths, to not eat the food that numbs us, both metaphorically and literally, but to stand clear and true with who we most deeply are, to walk forward in that. And it's helpful to have our brothers and sisters next to us, supporting us along the way, because this path is radical. Unconditional love is a radical love. Agendaless orientation towards life is a radical orientation. But it's the fastest way. It's the most efficient and fulfilling path when we allow ourselves to feel it. And it doesn't mean that we don't take time to lay down on the beach or read a fiction book or watch TV. It's just to know that your deepest unfolding is waiting for you. And until you really bring that truth in, you can be kidding yourself and still blaming the world for what doesn't work in your life, or blaming other people, blaming your upbringing, blaming God, or whoever it is that we blame. So just let this digest if this is a new topic for you, and if this just like totally burns your heart on fire, then awesome. Continue your path, and I totally support you in following that deepest longing that's inside of you. So now that there's this way in which you can orient towards life as an option, I want to offer you a few tools to begin to navigate here. So a lot of what this requires is to know, what does it feel like when your body is saying yes? What does truth resonate like in your body? Because your body is this beautiful instrument that's able to perceive so much, that's able to take what it is that life is showing you and kind of align. Is this true? No. Is this true? Yes. So take a moment now to just sit back and relax and breathe. At last, talk about awakening. It's intense. We just relax. And begin to feel your body, feeling your heart. And what I want you to do is say the words, I am, and then your first name directly, just out loud right now if you can, and if it's not weird if you're in a cafe. So for me, I am Michael. And then just notice. And then say it again a couple times. I am, and then your name. Notice any energy that moves, any shifts in your body, any images. And then relax and just kind of shake it out. And then say to yourself, this is always fun, you get to make up new names. I am Kangaroo Ken. And just say that to yourself. This will make you really weird if you're at a cafe. I am Kangaroo Ken. And then just notice what the no feels like. So as you're here, I encourage you to write in the chat, what does your yes feel like? What does true feel like in your body? And just click on the chat button or the chat window and just say a few things. For me, a yes is a heart opening. Energetically, it just expands here, and I get a little bit taller, just naturally. When I say I am Michael, something just opens, feels like a yes. And when I say no, or when I say my name is Kangaroo Ken, or I am Kangaroo Ken, or whoever it is that I'm saying, my solar plexus, which is right below the sternum, right here, there's some pain and there's some contraction. It goes in, and my sacrum kind of like dips down. I get a little smaller, and it's so important to be versed in your instrument and how it speaks to you, because it offers you something. It's that barometer that when your mind is like, I don't know, like this feels like I need to do this, but I don't know, this and this is not, it's too much money, and I don't know if I can do it, and who's going to support me. But if that thing is a yes, before the mind comes in and helps you convince yourself that it's a no, then that impulse that arises is trustable. And the universe doesn't waste impulses. It doesn't waste inspiration. So if there's inspiration inside of you to do something or to shift something in your life, then there's all the pathways towards getting you there. And you may not see what those pathways are or what those resources are, but it is something that if there's a yes and you keep walking, the path will begin to emerge underneath your feet. But you have to be sensitive. You have to be listening to the taps and not wait for the banging down your door that says, this isn't working. It's more like, hey, read this book. Hey, ask this question. Hey, tell this person you feel connected to them and you want to follow up. And more, as you get more and more sensitive, then you begin to follow these little intuitions, and you begin to follow a path towards whatever it is. Could be finding your deepest partner, finding the one you're supposed to be with, or aligning with the job that you are meant to be in, that really serves your highest unfolding. But if you're in a job that you hate right now, or you're living in a place that doesn't feel right, or you're in a stuck and stagnant relationship, instead of looking to how to make a radical change, feel the longing of wanting to find something that's true. And maybe the current situation you're in can metamorphosize into what's most true for you. But you'll never know if you don't listen and you don't follow the little breadcrumbs. And so I see John says that his yes feels resonant, true, affirming, uplifting, real. Great. And everybody's yes is going to feel different. And if I'll say one more thing on this, and we'll end with something. Sometimes people's guidance system is covered over by a lot of intense emotions, or a lot of intense worry and fear. And if you're that kind of person where in the past you've made deep life changes or even small decisions out of emotion, it's most likely led to frustration. So if you're somebody who has a lot of emotions and a lot of worry and a lot of intense thoughts, I'd really encourage you to wait until the waters of your emotions are calmer before you make a decision to do anything. Because it's usually that intense emotion that clouds our deeper guidance and judgment. So I'd like to end with a little experiential, a little exercise in feeling what's true and what's not true. A little bit deeper than this yes, no. So there's this concept called emptiness. And what this means basically is that we place meaning on top of everything. We are the meaning makers. We are the authors of our reality. So, for instance, if I am in the shower and I put some shampoo in my hand and it falls to the ground because it got wet, I could say, God, I'm such an idiot. Or I can say, oh, I wasn't paying attention. And so two people, depending on their worldview and how they relate to themselves, can have a whole different experience. And the same thing can be said when somebody you see across the street, you look at them and you think you catch their eye and you wave hi, and they don't wave back and they just look down. You're like, oh God, they hate me, or they're ignoring me, or they didn't see me, they didn't recognize me. So this way in which we author our own reality is really important to know, because we place meaning and identity and attachment to things and to our ideas. And so this practice is going to give us a little glimpse on an identity beyond our ideas and what we do and who we are. So each thing comes with a little bit of a movement. So I'm going to teach the movement very briefly, and then there's going to be a statement that I'm going to have you repeat out loud. And these statements aren't so much affirmations as they are provocations. Provocations to deepen who and what it is that you think you are and what animates your existence. So just play with me with this, and it'll be an experiment. Okay, so the first movement, each movement is going to end with another movement that looks like this. So I'm going to move this back so I can. So you're going to exhale the sound like good, but just with a breath. So it sounds like it's going to look like this. You'll say, I am. So just try it with me. I am. Good. And so we'll do 4 other movements and have different words or provocations. So the first one is an exhale, eh. And so it sounds like let's take a big breath in and say eh, but without the words, just the breath. And the movement is just flowing like this. So it looks like this. So let your head go. You go back and forth. And just now you're really going to look weird if you're at a cafe. So if it's too weird, just wait for the replay. So as you do this, you can close your eyes. Just go. And really feel where you are with your life. What are the things that you're involved in? Just back and forth. What's your work like? What's your relationships like? And then just say to yourself, as you do this, I am never the process that I'm in. Do it again. I am never the process that I'm in. And doing the other movement, I am. I am. Good. Now this next movement is E with the breath in, and your hands go like this. So it's an inhale. So do this a couple times. Here you are in your life. This is where you are. This is where you're situated in this moment. This is what your life looks like. This is what your bank account looks like. And say to yourself, I am never a situation that I'm in. I am never a situation that I'm in. I am never a situation that I'm in. And then I am. I am. We'll do 2 more. And then observe your life and what's coming at you. And that movement is inhale E, or inhale ah. You breathe in just over that sound. Kind of take it in your life as you do this. Imagine it's like these are the things that are coming down the pike. These are the responsibilities that I have. These are the papers I need to write, if you're a student, whatever it is. And then as you do this, I am never what's happening around me. Try it again. I am never what's happening around me. One more time. I'm never what's happening around me. I am. Again. I am. And this last one, these are for people that are very goal-oriented. You're going to exhale E, so it sounds like the movement's like this. So keep doing this. Just see all your focuses, all your goals, what it is that you really want to be accomplishing. Even the goal of putting awakening as your priority. And say it again. I am never a goal that I set. I am never a goal that I set. I am never a goal that I set. And then I am. I am. Last one. I am. And then just close your eyes and feel this energy. Feel this part of you that's beyond anything that you do, any goal that you set, any place that you are, any circumstances around you. And feel this deeper knowing, this deeper truth. That's beyond all of those things, that's before all of those things. And this recognition, this truth of the depth of your being will help create the spaciousness that when you do face the things that are scary and resisting, you know that something's deeper, you know that something's able to contain the intensity of your contractions, of your fear responses, of your reactions. So I encourage you to play with this and begin to play with how your life is either aligned with this deeper priority of awakening, and if it's something you even want to take on, if it's even a prayer or intention you want to state. And if you want to practice this in community, I'm offering a workshop that I'm calling Loving Beyond Love in Oakland on October 20th, 2013, for those of you who are watching this after that. And you can go to my website, integralawakening.com, and scroll to the bottom, and you can click on the calendar, read all about it, and then sign up. And I'm giving a special $20 off to people who are on this webinar. So if you register before Sunday, the 29th of September, you get $20 off. So I encourage you to check that out, and you can also check out my site. And if you're wanting to engage deeper and feel and learn ways that you can change your whole life to focus everything on awakening, and in doing so helping align all the issues that are happening in your life from a deeper perspective, and are looking to take that next step in your life, I encourage you to also go to my website, integralawakening.com, and I offer a free 30-minute initial consultation for coaching work that I do that can help people get to this next level and transition to a place where they're deeply congruent with their soul and find full fulfillment. And their life is actually a river of truth, and that relationships and work and healing happens within that greater container. So I wish you fullness and freedom and joy on your path and trust of your inner guidance. May it show you the way that you're supposed to be walking, and may it allow you to give the gifts that you're here to give to the world. Thank you so much for listening, and have a beautiful day.